Good afternoon and a warm welcome to our clinical academic career session. We are very grateful to you all for being able to take of your time and join this session. The session is being recorded and will be available on the Research Futures School website. So if at a later date you want to come back and revisit the slides, you're very welcome to do so. We hope today's session is informative, stimulating and helpful to you in whatever your experience or interest or understanding is of research in terms of thinking around how you might move forward. Before we look at today's session, if I might take a few moments to talk about the Research Futures School. Our vision is to drive the next generation of scientific discovery and enable our research workforce to realise your full work potential. We aim to provide you with opportunities to include clinical research as part of your role, or indeed to perhaps work in the future as part of Research and Innovation Department in a dedicated research role. So please do keep an eye on our Research Futures website for further details of opportunities that might be of interest to you. My thanks go to many people who have made today possible, but if I might take just an opportunity to introduce you to a few key contacts, our clinical academic leads. So Colin Crooks is our lead for medical, Louise Bramley for nursing and midwifery. Within allied health professionals, there are Vicky Booth, Alison Colway and Katie Robinson. And our healthcare science leads are Caroline Costigan and Richard Simpson. Please do note the contact details for your principal lead, and they would love to hear from you because together, collectively, we're looking to increase awareness of research training opportunities and advance all the research opportunities within and across the Trust. Today really is your opportunity to speak directly to the training and educational leads for your role within the breakout sessions. And we recognise that we cannot cover everything within a 2-hour session on research-related development. So there will be future sessions on areas such as grant writing, poster presentations, writing for publications, ethical applications, statistics and others. Once again, the details will be published on our website, but after this session, we would really be interested to hear from you around what training you feel that we should look to provide. So please don't hesitate to offer your feedback directly to us. Claire Diver will be introducing next an overview of the ICA HEE programmes before we move on with Rachel Evley on the Research Design Service. We'll then be moving into our breakout sessions with dedicated areas on the allied health professionals, healthcare science, medical and nursing and midwifery, before we look to conclude just ahead of 2:30, coming back together, thinking of the conclusions and summing up. And at this opportunity, or indeed in future days, we really would welcome your input as to what developments you would like to see us and what opportunities you would welcome from Research Futures. Thank you once again to all the speakers. I hope you have an engaging day and we welcome your feedback.
If I might just take a moment or two before we go into our first session, to just point out on the right hand side of your screen, if you haven't seen it already, there is a discussion bar and you have the opportunity there to raise any questions. We will do our best to raise them, to speak to those questions and to answer them at the end of each session. On the left hand side, when we get to that stage, there is a breakout rooms, and there are 4 rooms, one for each of the work group sessions. And if you do need any technical help, if you want to place notes in the Keynote questions on the right hand side, please feel free. We also find on the left hand side a toolbar named Technical Help. You're very welcome to search there. It will, however, move you out of the current room and you would need to rejoin. So without taking any more of your time, I'll pass over to Claire Diver. Thank you.
So thank you first of all for inviting me to talk today. I think it's really important that I highlight that I lead the Silver Pre-Doctoral Clinical Fellowship and have previously been involved in leading on what was then the NIHR funded MARM. I'm obviously familiar with the other programmes, but if you've got specifically something related to the NIHR, please go directly to them because they'll have the most up-to-date information. So I'm going to talk through the sort of 2 types of programmes that run in parallel really. One that's funded nationally by the NHRA and the other one that's run in regional areas. The programmes differ slightly regionally and I'm going to focus obviously on the ones that are available in the East Midlands. So research, I think, it's highlighted by today that research is there for everybody in our NHS organisations and social care organisations organisations and community should be recognising now, as they are at NUH, the importance of research embedded within all aspects of clinical care and service delivery. And that's really been behind the sort of development of the clinical academic career programmes that have been evident in medicine for some years, but really only been evident in nursing and midwifery and the AHP professions and scientist professions for just over a decade now. So there's lots of evidence on why we specifically need clinical academics. So for those of you that don't know, clinical academics are clinician researchers embedded firmly in clinical practice, but doing very clinically driven research alongside their clinical role. And why are these important? Well, you'll know yourselves as clinicians, you constantly ask questions about what you can do better. And because you're working with patients, you see the gaps that lead to those questions and have the curiosity to seek the answers. The notion of these schemes is to give you the skills and the time to develop these questions into research proposals, and for some of them to get research methods training so that you can deliver this research operationally. And what we see are clinical academics as inspirational people who draw people in and help them to dream the dream. There's Nadine Foster, who's a professor in physiotherapy, previously at Keele, now in Australia, and an NIHR research fellow when she was last here. She says what we all want is improved care and better outcomes, and what we want is a system that's focused on this. Again, highlighting clinical academics are the people who ask questions, and that leads to cycles of continuous improvement. And I think it's really important to highlight that you're incredibly fortunate at the moment to work in an organisation that has recognised the benefits of clinical academic, non-medical careers for some years now, and is really seen as a beacon of good practice, both regionally and nationally. So the point of this programme is to attract talented individuals to this ICA, Integrated Clinical Academic Career Pathway. As I say, to provide you with training and support, but also mentorship, and to expand research interest into the areas that are relevant to the NIHR and Health Education England. And the key here is about impact, what benefit this will actually result in. And we're looking at about a 3 to 5 year sort of pathway in terms of the research that you do. So who can apply? Everybody who is eligible for registration with these regulatory bodies. It used to be simple to put up who the professions were. Now they're fairly exhaustive. And it means that, you know, this is an absolutely fantastic opportunity, as I say, not just for nurses, midwives and AHPs, but the clinical scientists, social workers, people, as I say, not just in acute NHS teaching trust, but people within the community and social care as well. If you're going to apply, what you must be doing is being employed by a provider of health and or social care and provide care that is free for at least 50% of patients. And of course, that applies to NUH. But as an individual, you must be spending at least 50% of your current role delivering health and or social care that's free at the point of need. So that's really important, that this isn't for people who aren't involved in delivery of care. It's not a pathway for pure researchers. We're looking at people who are delivering that care within the organisation. And sometimes this can be a challenge, particularly for research nurses and other healthcare professionals who might be delivering research but might not actually be delivering care. And if we can construct that care as delivery of an intervention, then that's a way that we can sort of meet this criteria. And of course, there are different academic entry requirements at different levels of the fellowships and the programme. So for those of you that aren't familiar, this is the ICA pathway. You can see that we have a requirement for you to have an honours degree, BSc level as a minimum. And then the first stage could be the regionally delivered internship, previously known as a Bronze Award. Following that, there are pre-doctoral awards that are hosted by the NHRA, but similarly, there are pre-doctoral bridging programmes hosted within Nottingham by Health Education East Midlands. We then have the clinical doctoral fellowship afterwards, and followed by that, another bridging programme, the postdoctoral fellowship, which is to support applications for clinical lectureships and senior clinical lectureships. So where are we now within the East Midlands? The Clinical Scholar Awards were the East Midlands response to the government strategy. And as I say, previously they were called Bronze, with the internship, which was really seen as a precursor to a Masters in Research Methods, particularly when the NIHR funded those. After that, we have the Pre-Doctoral Fellowship, what was known as the Silver Award, and I co-lead the delivery of that. And that is really to develop people who want to be applying for a clinical academic PhD fellowship. And after that, the Postdoctoral Fellowship, as I say, known as the Gold Award. And we have between 9 and 10 years expertise in delivering these schemes and have evidence of success at every stage of the pathway. What these schemes provide are 48 days of funded opportunities, usually over 6 to 9 months, for nurses, midwives, as I say, HPs, health visitors, pharmacists, and clinical sciences. The Premasters bridging programme, so who is this really aimed at? This is considered the next step opportunity for up to 10 clinicians in the East Midlands to undertake a programme that really is to give you a taster of what a clinical academic career could look like. Typically, these are people who don't have a master's programme, but can be suitable for perhaps for people who have a pre-registration master's, such as the graduate entry nursing programme. It gives you some introduction to research training, but that's only about six days, so it is not in-depth research methods training. There is a written assignment and a reflective log that are produced as research outputs, and the opportunity to register that as a 15-credit M-level module. There are action learning sets where interns are brought together with facilitators who are academics to try and solve the problems and help support their transition through this pathway. And I think really important bit, mentoring from identified academic and clinical mentors. These mentors will work with you approximately sort of once a month, meet you for an hour, possibly more, and guide you in terms of your transition through this programme. And the idea is that this will successfully enable you to apply for the next stage of the clinical academic pathway, which would either be the pre-doctoral PhD, the NHRA PCAF, which is the pre-doctoral clinical academic fellowships, but we've also had people progress straight from the internship onto a PhD. It's very individually sort of orientated. The pre-doctoral is the next stage, and that's a next step opportunity for people who have a master's degree or equivalent postgraduate qualification. So you may have done 1 or 2 M-level modules within the university or a different university. And this is to put you in the position to apply for a clinical academic PhD fellowship. Having said that, whilst our emphasis is on the NHR PhD fellowship, the CDRF, we also encourage people to apply for other PhD fellowship opportunities to increase and enhance their opportunities of success. This again pays for protected paid time to develop a PhD proposal, to receive bespoke training based on a needs assessment. And if you're not familiar with it, we'd encourage you to look at the Research Academy RDF, so that's the Researcher Development Framework from VTI, and I can provide you with information on that. Again, there will be this really important mentoring. There are action learning sets again, and I think the really important thing with this fellowship is we provide multiple peer review opportunities. So you're given a number of opportunities to present your work to academics from within the university. You are given opportunities to present them at a masterclass, which is open for other people to attend. And again, we have our learning output. This occasion is a presentation and viva. So there's multiple opportunities for feedback on your written proposal, but also on your presentation and viva interview. The postdoctoral bridging programme draws in a much fewer clinicians, so we're generally looking at 2 to 3 who have a PhD and want to again further develop their clinical academic career by developing a postdoctoral lectureship or clinical lectureship proposal for submission to the NIHR. These programmes are specifically very bespoke in their nature, because the needs of individuals and their professions and their research proposal are very specific. But once more, mentoring will be provided from identified academic and clinical mentors. And as I say, that's so that you can apply for the next stage of that clinical academic pathway. It's really important to highlight that all 3 of those programmes will provide protected paid time. So that's up to £14,000 at the postdoc, and for the pre-doc and the pre-masters, £7,500 is provided to your employer to backfill your time. Now, that it's important to note the difference here, that with the HEME opportunity, that's £7,500 irrespective of the band grade you're at. So if you're a band 5, that will be in excess of the cost of your backfill. However, if you're a band 8, that will not fund your backfill. There is no extra funding, and therefore it's really important that your employers are aware of that, but we still expect the same commitment, i.e. that 48 days. So we then have the NIHR ICA pathway, and it's really important that we have a difference here between this and the Health Education England one. It's been relatively recently that they've introduced the policy of 2 attempts, and then you're sort of suspended from applying for a few years. And what that means is you must be putting in a really high quality application. If it is deemed to be unfundable, then you have had one of your attempts. However, if it is deemed fundable but not funded because they have insufficient funding at that round, then you would still have 2 further attempts allowed. In addition, recently they have introduced the condition that you can only apply for 1 round simultaneously. So you couldn't apply for the pre-doctoral academic fellowship and the doctoral at the same time. The pre-doctoral clinical academic fellowship, the PCAF, only came in 3 years ago. The funding is awarded to an individual, and that funding is hosted by an employing organisation, which is usually the sort of employing body, but it can also be the academic setting. Their desired output is the application for a PhD peer-reviewed fellowship. It's really important that that is narrated within your application, that that's what you're intending to do. These really are aimed at people who are ambitious and want a long-term clinical academic career. This award, like all of the NIHR awards, provides salary to complete it, full-time or part-time. So that means full salary. So if they're band 5, the NHS or the HEI receives that salary at band 5 level, and if it's at band 8D, it's at 8D level. So these are a much more attractive proposition from a funding perspective for both yourself and the organisation. There is funding towards this for a development programme that could be master's level training, or if you can justify it, full funding for a master's programme of study, £1,000 for attendance at conferences and meetings, and £1,000 towards mentoring. So this offers a sort of more intense, greater commitment in terms of time that you're released, as opposed to the sort of regional schemes that we have. There is also something now called the PCAF Bridge, which came out last year. And this is for people who perhaps don't require the same level of research methods training, but do require the time to develop their PhD proposal. Again, it provides full salary costs at either 6 months for 4 days a week or 12 months for 2 days a week. There is some training provision, but this is significantly reduced down to £400 for courses, £500 for conferences, and £500 for mentorship. So this is for people who require less of that methods training, but still require the time to develop that application and make it a high quality, successful PhD fellowship application. The next level is the clinical doctoral fellowship. And again, this is highly lucrative. It provides funding that covers tuition fees, full salary again, the cost of the project, a tailored training programme. They require you to spend still 20% of time in professional practice and development. So this is really reinforcing that notion that this is a clinical academic pathway and not a solely research pathway. And it can be undertaken full-time or part-time with funding depending on who hosts the awards. And I'm sorry, apologies, I've not taken something out there. It provides no research costs. The NIHR clinical or senior clinical lectureship would come after the Gold Award if people wanted to do that, but this is a postdoctoral fellowship. The clinical lectureship is to support those in the early stages of their postdoctoral career. So Tom earlier introduced you to some of the AHPs who support clinical academic careers within the Trust, and both Katie Robinson and Vicky Booth are in receipt of this award. The senior clinical lectureship is for more experienced researchers, but have still yet to be recognised as leaders in their field. Structure here is slightly different. It's 3 years, it's either full-time or part-time with these varying different splits. So you can have a 60-40 academic and professional practice, a 50-50 and a 40-60. It pays for up to 60% of the awardee's total salary, the cost of the approved research project, and the cost of personal training and development programs, which can include clinical development, conference attendance, and an overseas research visit. What's been evident in the last couple of years since we've had the original PCAF change is that the NIHR are looking at partnership fellowships as well. So they have partners who have proven sort of recognised schemes with them. So such as Moorlands Eye Hospital, the Muscular Dystrophy UK are currently running shared fellowships with the NIHR. But also what we've noticed with the PCAF is that creative funding is viewed favourably. So what do I mean by that? What that means is if you can find funding from elsewhere, it might be from a charity, it might be from an employer, which would part fund your PCAF, then they see that as really important, as other people willing to invest in you, and that's viewed very favourably by them. I want to draw to your attention that on the 12th of May, we are hosting a masterclass in Nottingham that will be done virtually via Microsoft Teams, and that will give more insight into these programmes. We have a representative from the NHR there. We have more detail on the clinical academic internships and bridging awards. We've got people talking, including some of the people from your organisation, on creating a clinical academic culture and inspiring clinical academic success. And in the afternoon, there will be presentations from the postdoctoral bridging fellows, and applications for that can be made to Patricia Zunker, who's our regional administrator. There's also a number of links there that you can follow to find out more information about the different levels in the ICA programme. And that's just also to highlight the masterclass, but also the fact that the applications for the internship, the pre-doctoral and postdoctoral fellowships are currently open with a deadline of the 28th of June. I've popped on the slides the people within the different schemes that you can contact for more information. So that's Ros Kane and Ian McGonigal at Lincoln University, myself and Kate Radford at Nottingham for the pre-doc, and Joseph Manning and Pip Logan at Nottingham for the postdoc.
Thank you very much, Claire. I'm hoping that colleagues found that as useful as I did, and might be taking a moment or two to think around questions. Yeah. But I wonder if I can ask in the first instance, it might be an unfair question, so apologies. Do you have a feel for how subscribed or oversubscribed some of these programs might be in terms of applicants? Yeah. And apologies, it might be just me, but I'm struggling to hear you on sound.
Okay, I am unmuted, so I'm not sure. Is that any better? No.
I can hear you.
Okay. So it's a really important question, Tom, and they are.
It might just be myself, but I'm struggling to hear you. Apologies, Claire.
They are massively oversubscribed, generally. So generally, we'll have at least three. You've probably got a 1 in 3 chance with the internship and the pre-doc fellowship. It's probably more like 50% chance at the postdoc fellowship, that's the bridging awards. And then we know with the PCAF, with the standard PCAF, they seem to be much tougher to get than the PCAF bridge. So last year, again, we probably saw a 1 in 3 funding of the PCAF standard, whereas with the PCAF bridge, we probably saw about a 90% funding of those awards. So we can certainly see that there seems to be a bigger push towards funding sort of these less costly awards than the more costly ones. CDRF, I think you're looking again at about a 1 in 3 chance. So it's really important to think that people work both with those of us who run the programs, but also with their potential supervisors and any clinical mentors to develop really robust applications that go in. And we're particularly interested, obviously want to support everybody, but particularly professions that perhaps are very new to this and who aren't sure of exactly what we're looking for in those applications. Can't hear you.
I'm sensing I'm going to guess the answer to this one, but I'll ask the question anyway. I'm thinking very early engagement is always better than people coming to you later on in the process. And
absolutely.
In terms of deadlines.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, particularly with the NIHR fellowships, I would probably say you're looking at a 1-year lead-in. Even with the pre-doctoral, if you're doing the pre-doctoral standard in particular, a 1-year lead-in. And I really see this as an opportunity for people to engage with potential supervisors or mentors and to start to build those relationships, because it's really important that you're going to be working with somebody that's on your application in a relationship that's working for you. And so it's important, you know, we can signpost people within our organisations towards mentors, as I'm sure those sort of clinical academic leads are within the organisation. And as I say, Nottingham has lots of experience of success at every level of these awards. And quite often, for example, one of the PCAF awardees who I supervise has given us permission to share those applications so people can have an idea of what's involved, but also of the standard of those. And I can see Rachel's got a question of what are the most common reasons for not supporting applications. I think, Rachel, it depends on what you mean by not supporting and whether that support is from your employing organisation or whether it's from, you know, the awarding organisations. They're highly competitive and the standard is extremely high, Rachel, and we've now got these awards for a variety of professions. And so they're highly competitive. If we look at 30 PCAF awards across the UK, across all these professions, that gives you an idea of how competitive they're going to be. For employers not supporting or clinical managers, you've got a fantastic reputation at NIH, and if you talk to Alison, Vicky, Katie, Louise, Joe Cooper, Joseph Manning, they can give you a sense of what are the things to talk to people about when you're trying to sell this to your clinical manager, whose main concern is how you're going to deliver your service. And I think that's a particular challenge for some of the smaller professions. However, this year, out of our 8 pre-doctoral fellows, we've got 2 clinical scientists, one of whom is from NUH. So we are starting to see those sort of younger professions in terms of these awards starting to come through, and therefore there are role models out there for you to talk to and to learn from. And somebody asked if there are meetings for London regions. London areas will have their own schemes. Alison, I don't know about medicine and dentistry because my lead is on AHPs and my other knowledge with the pre-doc is on AHPs, nurses and midwives. So I would say medicine and dentistry staff would need to look at the NIHR provision and health education East Midlands provision separately. We know that they were being supported way before, you know, our professions were. Okay. Obviously, you know, my email details are on the slide. Please, after this, I know what happens with me. 2 hours later, I'll think of the question. You know, please email me. I'm more than happy, as is Kate and all the other award holders, to to answer any questions that you've got and to give you some guidance on what we're looking at within the sort of individual level of applications. We've got a database of academic mentors who have different requirements dependent on what level of the scheme they're operating at. And if you have somebody in mind who's not on that list, then we can tell you what you need to do to get them on that list. Equally, if you have no idea who could be an academic mentor, then again, we can help you identify a potential mentor. At the point of application, you don't need a mentor for the regional schemes. You do for the national schemes. And again, we've got lots of expertise in sort of aligning people, both with the sort of professional, clinical, and sort of clinical area expertise.
Thank you, Claire. There's just a couple of more questions. Rob's asked if there's going to be a breakout session for medical staff, and four one of them is for medical staff. I'm not sure it's going to cover dental, but apologies, maybe that's an area we need to try and pick up on. And Joshua's asked, could the time awarded for PCAF be used to complete a pilot study before undertaking a PhD?
Apologies, Rob. When I was asked to talk, I just thought I was talking about nurses, midwives, and AHPs, so I don't have knowledge of the medical scheme. And Josh, the PCAF standard is really not about you doing that pilot work. If that's the thing that you've got to do, then you've got to make an argument for using your time to do that. And for some people, use it to develop a publication to strengthen their application, and certainly at the PCAF level, the majority of people who are applying will have a history of publications. It might only be a couple, but they'll be there. With the PCAF bridge, it's unlikely you'd have that time to do a pilot study. I think people completely underestimate the amount of time it will take to write an application. And I would say the pre-doctoral application is almost as detailed as the doctoral. And so it will take a good, 4 days over 6 months to get that application robust. When I supported Abby, I probably saw 6 iterations of that application before it was anywhere near ready to go in. So it depends what the nature of the pilot study is, Josh, I think.
That's helpful, thank you.
Yeah, and they certainly won't cover any research costs for it.
That is helpful, thank you, Claire.
Thanks, Carolyn.
So as we move on, let me express my thanks to Claire. We do appreciate it. I can see the thanks that's in the chat forum, so thank you for that, and thank you, Rob, for pointing out that the medical session is covering dental. Apologies for misreading it. We'll pass over now, thank you, Claire, to Rachel Evley, who's going to talk us through the research design service.
Thank you, Tom. I'll attempt to share my screen now. Can you see that? Does that come up all right?
Yes, we can.
Lovely, thank you. Right, so my name is Rachel Evley. I'm from the Research Design Service for the East Midlands. I'm actually based out of the Leicester base. We have 2 sites, one in QMC and one down at the George Davies Centre, normally in Leicester. But we do cover the whole of the East Midlands. I'm Deputy Site Lead for the Leicester base. I'm also the Fellowship Lead for the East Midlands region. I would just like to say that thank you for having me today, and we'll just get on with some of the questions that have come up in Claire's talk might be covered in mine, but if you have any questions at the end, happy to answer them. So let's just get this to move on. Right, so this is an overview of the NIHR. It just gives you an idea of, we have a lot of infrastructure, and it's not just the research programs, but we have all of the clinical research facilities. The research information system sits under there, so you've probably heard of Prospero for the systematic reviews. We've got the academy across the top, which is all for the fellowship, so we go from pre-doctoral right through to professorship. The Research Design Service sits under the research side of things, along with all of our 9 research programmes for funding, the research school, so that's social care, primary care, as well as public health. We've also, within the research programmes, got Involve, which is now called the Centre for Dissemination Engagement. So we have changed our name in the last year. We've also got the Cochrane reviews sit under there. So there are a lot of us that are all linked together, and we work with the ARCs as well. So that's the applied research collaborations. So there are 10 research design services across England. We do cover research into the other devolved nations, but the lead researchers are normally sitting within England to be able to access the research design service. We do support NIHR funding, that's our main priority. However, we do support any applied health research, which is nationally peer reviewed. So that covers all of the research councils, the research charities. So there's the Association of Medical Research Charities, which have 150 members. So it's not just the big, programme grants. We're also looking at the smaller pots of funding that can be £20,000, £30,000, as well as all the fellowships that sit within those schemes as well. So not just the NIHR fellowships. So these are our bases. We're based at Leicester and Nottingham, which we have said, and we cover the whole of the region right up to Chesterfield and all the way down to the bottom of Northamptonshire and across to the coast. We have a big diverse team. We have medical statisticians, qualitative methodologists, which is what I am, health economists, social scientists, PPI experts, epidemiologists. So we have a vast, a broad member of staff, and most of us are researchers are in our own right as well. So it's not just that we support people, we actually do the research, we also put in the application, so we know firsthand what it feels like. So this is how to get in contact with us. We are no longer on the phone, unfortunately, because we can't access our phones. So the best way is to go onto our website, which is there, and fill in the support request form. You can email us as well, and it will be directed out to specific people if necessary, or just as a general comment. We do ask a little bit of information if you want us to support you, sort of like what project you're thinking of doing, just a short synopsis. If you've got a funder in mind, although, we're very supportive and will help you find funders if you're not sure, but it is working towards putting in a funding application. And if you've got an idea of what advice you might need, it could be very broad, it could be early doors, sort of like brainstorming about your things, but we're quite happy to support you at those early stages. So depending on your needs, we can also support you out to other useful services, such as the clinical research networks, the clinical trials units, or the R&D offices that are sitting within the trusts and the universities. We do support patient and public involvement, and we have workshops that are running, and at some point we will restart, we have timetables that sit on our web pages about when our events take place. There is some funding available for PPI to get your group together, to help put your application in, and it gives you a bit of pot of funding to go before you can actually access it through the grants or the fellowships. For fellowships, it's at £150. For grants, it's up to £300, and there's an application process. So that's part of working with us, that you have access to, being able to apply for that. We help you navigate the application forms and all the different processes. We have a vast database of people that have gone through and been successful. So we also get to sit and observe the panels, as well as some of us are actually on the panels. So we see firsthand what's going through at the time. We offer multidisciplinary advice panels now. So they take place, we have 4 times a week. And it's where brainstorming sessions with about 4 or 5 of us with different methodological backgrounds that can actually discuss through your ideas and get something down so that you can work towards putting in an application. We review application drafts ongoing, working with an advisor, so really from the beginning right through to when it's nearly ready to submit. And we also have a monthly review panel, which acts like the proper panels that sit and actually reviews the grants and the fellowships. So it's very much a late stage review before it's due in probably the next month, just to give you a final overview of what you're putting in. For fellowships, we offer mock interviews, and we use the Zoom platform because our academy uses Zoom for their fellowship interview. So we try and match as well as we can to what the academy are doing. And we interpret feedback from panels. So that's whether it's successful or unsuccessful. because even with successful applications, you may still need to change something to be able to get funded. So we have vast experience of doing that. This is just an overview of how we work on the application. So as you can see, there's lots of different little areas. Evidence, so we literature searching, we can help you with that, point you in the right direction, show you where to find what's previously been funded, as well as just your standard literature searches. We know what current studies are funded and what current studies are out there, and we can also help you look at need. We do have information specialists sitting within our team. For the team, we're looking at, have you got on a grant, have you got the appropriate expertise, depending on the level of award you're planning to go for. And with the fellowships, do you have the appropriate mentors? Is your training plan correct? You know, have you thought of everything that you can possibly think of with your, your supervisors? So from pre-doctoral through to doctoral level, the Academy are really looking to see the same supervisors coming through, and are they the right people to work with you on that? So it's thinking ahead of how your career is going to pan out. Impact is really important for the NIHR. So you're looking at potential benefits to NHS and social care. So since we became the Department of Health and Social Care, there are specific fellowships available for social care as well as NHS studies. So we do have expertise within that. Patients and others, how will that potential be realised? And certainly within a fellowship, what impact will it have on you, and not just the actual NHS or patients? So public involvement, so meaning patient and public involvement at all stages, including the development of the application itself, and that's within fellowships as well as grants. They are utilised perhaps differently as you're running along through the actual fellowship, but they still need to be there, and there will be 2 lay members of the panel that will be asking you about that if you're successful to interview. So with the funder, we're looking at making sure that you've got the right remit, the process, the funding limits, what the priorities are for that funder at that moment in time, because they do change. How you're putting a competitive application, is the criteria correct? What deadlines are you running to? Because again, these are changing. Some of the grants have now gone to every other month for applications to go in. Fellowships are different depending on whether you're going for the general fellowship or the ICA fellowship, as Claire mentioned. There are more opportunities for the general fellowships every year. And what are the contracting requirements? And we can help you with the design, which is where we really sit. So is the methods right? What methodology are you using? We have vast knowledge, and we can working more closely across the whole of the RDS service now. So we have links with West Midlands and South Central. And it just means that we can tap into their expertise as if we don't have it sitting within the region. Unfortunately, we don't normally have with projects where there's no intention to apply to a national peer-reviewed funding scheme. So like the local pump priming, we don't normally get involved in, but we do know when they're taking place. So we can give you a heads up if we know of other funding that's out there. We don't support student research unless that's part of actually putting in for a fellowship. We could help you to deliver the research if the application is successful. Well, at least not part of the RDS. So most research is in our own right, so there is a possibility for us to be bought out, but that's not part of you having to use our service. That's an add-on if you need us. It might be something we can sort out. And we can't write the application for you. We can only advise and comment, and that can be quite hard, unfortunately, so we'll try not to do that. This is an overview of the actual programme. So these are the grants, and I realise this is more of a fellowship thing, but slides will be available afterwards, and it's really useful to go and have a look on the website, because sometimes the research for patient benefit, which is the top one, which is the lower cost, is ideal for early career researchers, and it could be that's something you do as you're moving through on the fellowships and you're looking at grants to develop you as a clinical academic. This is the overview of the whole academy pathway. So Claire's touched on the healthcare professionals schemes, which are in red. There are also the fellowships for all, which anybody can apply for. So you get methodologists as well as doctors, dentists, and allied health professionals applying for those. And then you've also got the in-practice fellowships and the clinical fellowships and clinical lectureships for medics, which are open which will be talked about later, I presume, with Rob, but it's very much, they are advertised on the NHS web pages rather than through the actual academy open calls. And there's sometimes there are actual PhDs advertised by the Applied Research Collaboration, so the ARC. They've just closed recently this time round, but they are worth looking at. And also sometimes the actual biomedical research centres will have funding to be able to support fellows or small grants. And it's also worth looking at the NIHR schools as well, as I mentioned earlier. They have their own PhDs, and they also have their own grants that come out, but not as often. They tend to be once or twice in their 5-year contract. These are the current NIHR fellowship strategic themes. So it's always, you don't have to sit within these, but it does push you just slightly ahead. If you're meeting one of these, health data science is definitely becoming more an important one with NIHR. At the last advanced fellowships, a lot of the funded advanced fellowships sat within health data science. It's not to say that it won't fund anything else, but they are starting to look down more on their strategic themes. So it's a bit similar to what Claire mentioned earlier. This is the timeline that we like to work to. We're looking about 9 to 10 months before, but fellows do come to us a lot earlier than that. And we do have people that I've worked with certainly for well over 18 months to get an application in. It's better to get it in as the best it can be rather than rushing it, because you don't have that many opportunities to resubmit. So at the beginning, you're looking to identify the possible funders, you're discussing and engaging with your colleagues and loads of different people to make sure that your idea is important, and that includes patients and the public. And you're looking at perhaps getting in touch with all the other organisations you might need to be working with, such as the Clinical Research Network. In the writing phase, you're refining and developing it and getting feedback. And as an RDS, we're happy to work with you across all of this and work with you as you modify things and firm different sections up. Would point out that institutional deadlines will probably be earlier than what you're expecting the funder deadline to be, and it's always worth getting that in your head, that you will have to split into your institution earlier and get everything signed off. Because the head of school or your head of department signature will possibly block it going in at the last minute. Especially on the funder deadline, that needs to be signed off by the institution. So if it's not signed off in time, it will not go through to NIHR. I'd also say now as well, we've moved over with the fellowships that the SOCAT form, so the excess treatment costs form, needs to be done at stage 1. So that needs to be, you need to be talking to the CRN early to get that signed off. Even if you have no excess treatment costs, it still needs to have a nil return on it. So that needs to go in. In the resources section, I've put a list of useful contacts, and the SOCAT form is part of there as well with the links to it. So it's worth remembering, there will be different things that are needed. You'll be working with lots of different people to get these applications in. So just a quick 10 things to keep in mind when you're applying. Be prepared, read the funder guidance and get advice. One of the things that we find the most, I'm telling people within the RDS, is that they really need to read the guidance. It's very, it changes over time. Different rounds will bring out different guidance sometimes. Certainly within this last year, we've had the SOCAT form come out. That needs to go in at stage 1 rather than stage 2. So always read the guidance. And if you're stuck on it, get in touch with us. We know it inside out. Involve patients and the public and other end users early on to make sure that what you're wanting to do is actually important for the people that you're going to be influencing. And it also includes all stakeholders. So it could be commissioners as well. So think, who will this research touch? And they should be, you should be consulting with them as well. Assemble the right team. So don't be too parochial. So it could be that you need to move outside of your institution to the best place. It's same with your supervisors. You need to make sure they're the right supervisors for you, that you can work with them for 3 to 4 years, and that they're going to be able to enhance your development as you're going along. The Academy are very much looking at you taking a step change and boosting your career into this clinical academic. So think about who you need to be around you. Give yourself plenty of time to develop your idea, team and application. and sell yourself. And that's one of the things, perhaps going back about, you know, what stops people going forward and why are things rejected from the academy. It's because they're not saying why they're definitely wanting to be this leader in research in the area they want to be in. So you've got to explain clearly why it's innovative, why it's important, and how you're going to make a difference by what this fellowship will do for you. Be clear and consistent in your description of your issues. Just, you know, be very concise in what you're doing. We have this way of using lots of words to change what we're saying, and really with the applications you need to be consistent. Make sure your research plans are realistic. So you don't want to be doing a big randomized controlled trial within a fellowship. You won't have the time. You'll manage to probably get to the feasibility side of it, but, you know, be realistic that you can complete it within the time. These are professors that sit on the panels. They will know what's about, you know, what you can achieve in that time. Write well and present well, including your plain English. So get people to read what you've written. A lot of us have this thing where we know what we want to say and it's sitting in our head, but it might not be down on paper. So make sure that what you're written actually comes across well and what you want to present. It can be really hard to respond positively to review or panel feedback, certainly within the stages, not so much at fellowships now because you don't get much feedback to respond to. But, you know, thank you for your feedback and address it. It's the same within the interviews themselves. If they ask you to do something or suggest something, think about it. It could be that that's the way it needs to go. Don't become defensive. And if at first you don't succeed, keep trying. And there's loads of opportunities out there. It's very, very competitive, the fellowships. But we know many people who have failed the first time who have got it the second time. So, you know, keep trying. This is the useful links and resources. They are over in the resources section on the left-hand side of your screen, hopefully, which you'll be able to access after this. And there are contact details should you need us. So that's follow us on Twitter as well, because we do have a lot of tweets coming out around about what's going on and what when our workshops are taking place. We will have a fellowship workshop again in the autumn, and we're looking at doing a grant one next year. But within the resources, you can see South Central at the top. That's a lot, I think it's about 4 or 5 YouTube videos that are from the Essential Guide to Grant Applications workshop that they ran over 3 days earlier in March. Really useful, and it works for fellowships as well as for grants. So I'll just stop. Oh, I'm just showing my screen.
That's great. Thank you very much, Rachel. Very much appreciated. We are running slightly over, which I fear is my fault. So apologies. If there are questions, if people want to very quickly put them in the discussion board, we'll try and answer those quite quickly. Rachel, can I just ask, picking up on the fellowship strategy has 4 themes. Yes. One of those is public health. Can I ask, is a question, one around public health, is that in terms of the speciality, or is that public health benefit in its wider sense?
The theme tends to be around public health themes, so it's more sort of public health research. We don't tend to see so many of those, to be honest, because they tend to sit off in the public health research grants, or actually in the money, you know, like the funding coming out of the School of Public Health. But it is one worth considering. NIHR look at public health as a you know, like more of a national level rather than individual thing now. So they're moving away from, you know, affecting the individual more to affecting, you know, health as a whole. And it's something that we're still learning about because they keep changing how they're running the public health stuff. But yes, health data science is what we're seeing more of, and artificial intelligence. They're definitely the themes that are coming out more recently.
Thank you.
Not to say that that's the way it has to go.
Thank you. Advice from Alison is to engage in terms of speaking with colleagues. Question from Louise. You mentioned an incubator pilot. Oh
no, Louise, I didn't. Sorry, I know what Louise means. So NIHR also have incubators. So there's the pilot scheme at the moment for the nursing and midwifery, but there are also ones for methodology as well. But yeah, Louise is one of the contacts for the nursing and midwifery incubator. So yes, we're involved in that. It's really useful. It is a good way of getting, speaking to the people that sit within the trust to be able to work out how you can actually develop your career that's outside of the fellowships to start with. So it gives you more localized areas to work on to be able to build up into the fellowships. Thanks, Louise.
Thank you very much. On that, just in the interest of time, I'm going to suggest we move on.
Yeah.
But can I thank yourself, Rachel, and previous speaker, Claire? Thank you both very much for your time and for joining us. Without any delay, I wonder if I can invite colleagues to move forward. On the left-hand side, you'll see the breakout rooms. Click on the breakout rooms, you will see breakout rooms E, C, and D. And I would invite you to join us now.